All right, folks, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome. My name is Elizabeth Drembus, and I'm the genealogist with the William and Mary Bray School Lab. In service to the Bray School Lab's mission of uncovering, documenting, preserving, and disseminating the history and the legacies of the Williamsburg Bray School. We host a monthly series on Zoom in order to share recent genealogical findings, engage the descending community in this work in order to broaden our understanding of those legacies. And we enlist the help of historians and genealogists, as well as the general public, in furthering the conversations and the research surrounding the Williamsburg Bray School. So the title of the monthly series is Bray School Stories. This evening's focus and title is Unbound and Undeterred. And we're going to be talking about a very special exhibit that is going on at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, as well as the traveling exhibit that is at William and Mary. But first, some housekeeping items. So for those of you who have just recently joined in, once again, we are recording this session. It will be available later on our YouTube channel. To find it, simply Google Bray School Lab YouTube. If you prefer not to be recorded, please feel free to access this later from our YouTube channel. So I'm joined this evening by Elizabeth Klaczynski, the Associate Curator for the Virginia Museum of History and Culture and the curator of the Unbound exhibit. Joining us also is Jennie Davy, the Exhibits and Artifacts Curator for William and Mary Libraries. And she's the one who is responsible for bringing the traveling exhibit to William and Mary. And of course, Theodora Ashby, Williamsburg Bray School descendant community member, constant participant in Bray School Stories. Welcome, Teddy. We're so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Once we get started with our discussion, I'm going to invite each of them to fully introduce themselves. I just wanted to kind of lay the land and just kind of give you just a brief intro for them. So our monthly sessions are designed to spark conversation. So I invite you to share your thoughts and your comments in the chat or by raising your hand, and hopefully we can get to those comments and those questions. So that's my welcome. I'm going to share a little bit of some upcoming events happening in the month of April. April's going to be real busy for us, and we're excited to share some of the happenings. So let me see if I can get that going. And I'm going to invite Maureen to share a little bit about
Oh, look at that.
descendants. Can everybody see that visual?
Yes.
Terrific.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good evening, everyone. And we are 2 weeks out. We are 2 weeks out from the start of this year's Descendants Week, which is now our fifth Descendants Week already. And it's a time of celebration. It's a time to shine a light on the Bray School descendant community. And by doing that, we also, of course, shine a light on the Bray School students. And it's really celebratory. We kick off the week with a Zoom similar to this. And we're going to talk about what's happening, not just in the Bray School Lab, but with our various partners, so that we can kind of see what's coming up, what 2026 is going to look like in different ways. The Tuesday through Thursday, just a little something new. We're going to do button making. And this will be on the main floor Swem library. As many of you know, maybe not everyone, this has been an academic year of transition for the Bray School Lab, transitioning from strategic cultural partnerships to William and Mary libraries or university libraries more broadly. So we wanted to do a little something to really bring home the fact that we were in the library and invite people just to stop for a minute, do a little activity that connects them with what we're doing this week, coming up with Descendants Week. Friday is one of our most popular events. That is our reception. That is truly celebratory. It is fellowship. This year we have the extra opportunity to engage with history with the Unbound exhibit from the VMHC. And that is already in the library. We look forward to the reception, which will be on the Swem patio, and inside on the main floor will be the exhibition. And then Saturday because we always want to do something that is preservation oriented, family oriented. Saturday the 18th, we'll have a preservation workshop that is focusing on preserving family Bibles. They are so important to family history, which obviously lends itself to and is the foundation of community history. So we'll be doing a workshop from 9:30 to 11:30 in special collections. And I've put all this information in links that I've just sent out to the entirety. So the brief description and the respective links. You can always go to the Bray School Lab's website. That is wm.edu/Bray Lab. Just scroll down a bit, you'll see upcoming events. Click on that and we'll take you to the page with all of these events. If you're doing it on your computer, just look at everything to the left. Don't worry about the little icons. Those are more like keywords or categories, but all the information and the respective links are on the page to the left. If you're doing it on your phone or other mobile device, just going to keep scrolling down and you'll see the description and then the individual links. And if you have any problems, just reach out to us and we'll help you get registered for the events that you are interested in. We look forward to it.
Perfect. Thanks, Maureen. So that's what's coming up in the lab in 2 weeks, like Maureen said. And I did put a link in the chat as well. So if you wanted to go through that way, so to register. We also wanted to share a little bit about what our partners over at the Lemon Project are doing. Both the Lemon Project and the Bray School Lab moved into the library this past year. And so want to make sure that we're highlighting what our partners are doing as well. So again, April, and particularly that week of Descendants Week, is going to be super busy and lots of opportunities to engage with African American history, with the histories that the Bray School Lab and the Lemon Project are both kind of diving into and really kind of talking about. So if you're interested in any of these activities, I can also put a link to the Lemon Project's website so that you can find these activities. But they're having one of their very fun porch talks at noontime. If you want to take a break from working and want to just pop on to that virtual program from noon to 1 on April 16th. And then that same evening from 6 to 7, they have their genealogy research roundtable. And then again, another porch talk coming up the following week. So lots of opportunities happening at William and Mary, particularly at Swem Library. So we encourage you to participate as much as you can in April. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. And we're going to move into talking about our program this evening. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the focus and we're going to talk a little bit about the design of the exhibit, talk about bringing it to Swem Library, and also just kind of from a descendant community members perspective, what this meant, particularly because the Ashby family is highlighted actually in the exhibit. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to kind of take it from here. And I'm going to get ready to enjoy listening to the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everyone who's here today for this evening for this program. It's just an incredible opportunity to partner with an amazing institution. And I will also say before I start, we worked very closely with the Bray School in forming Unbound, and Elizabeth was incredibly helpful. Tanya Meredith was amazing. We miss her. So we just really, really appreciate all the collaboration. So thank you so much. I did put together a PowerPoint. Let's see if it works. There we go. Come on. There we go.
Perfect.
Great. Can everyone see that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wonderful. So as Elizabeth said, my name is Elizabeth Klaczynski. I'm an associate curator at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, which is in Richmond. We put together this exhibit called Unbound, Free Black Virginians 1619 to 1865. It opened in June 2025 and will be running through July 4th, 2027. So if you have not had an opportunity to come see it yet, please do. And again, we also have a traveling version that is making the rounds, and we are thankful that it is at Swem right now. I will have to come see it out in the wild. So I just like to start with names of people that are in the exhibit, and you'll see Matthew Ashby. Of course, he's up front for those purposes. And you know, a big part of this exhibit, the impetus was figuring out who the free Black Virginians were. I often introduce tours asking people, how many free Black Virginians do you think lived in the state in 1860? And I get ranges from 0 to 100 to maybe 1,000, or, they're usually pretty small numbers. And everyone is really shocked when I say that 60,000 free Black people lived in Virginia on the eve of the Civil War. And so we wanted to figure out who were these people? Who were their what are their stories? How did they get there? And so that again sort of brought us to imagining what an exhibit about these people would look like. The sort of impetus behind the exhibition was to really delve into the stories of free Black Virginians. It's embarrassing to say I studied Southern history, I studied Virginia history in graduate school and undergrad. I focused on slavery, and as I said, I was kind of embarrassed to say I didn't know that much about free Black Virginians. And I think that that's something that a lot of people can relate to. I think we correctly center slavery in the narrative of Virginia. But there was thousands of people who lived free and sort of on the margin of that institution. And we really, again, wanted to find out who were these people, what were their stories, what were their lives like. And if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is the beginning of the exhibition. It's a beautiful space if you haven't come to see it. We're really proud of the work that we did, especially our exhibit designer and graphic designer. But the space like kind of pulls you into a semicircle. And there's a statement, and you can't really see it here, but it begins the exhibition that says, "Every person is naturally born free." Right? And it's through the actions and choices of others that curtail that freedom or limit or sort of diminish that freedom. And so that's the statement we really wanted to begin with, and to get people to sort of contemplate, what is free? Like, what does freedom mean? Who is free? How are they free? And what are the ways in which that freedom is limited or stolen? And I think these are sort of perpetual questions, not just from a historic perspective, but they're questions we're dealing with now, right? These are universal questions, not only for Virginia, but I would argue also the United States. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So the exhibition itself is chronological, but also thematic. We thought it was really important to take people through the different sort of time periods within the story. And it, of course, starts in 1619. I think we all know the significance of that date in this group, the arrival of the first Africans in Virginia. We probably also know, their legal status was somewhat ambiguous, right? Because we're a British colony at this point. We're operating under British common law. And British common law says very little, actually, about the institution of slavery. So we called this section Defining Freedom, because sort of, I would argue, the project of the 17th century is defining slavery and freedom, and for the first time, sort of in world history, beginning, of course, with the Spanish, you're seeing the status of slavery being linked to the idea of race, and it being an inherited status. So, the 17th century was somewhat of a messy, sort of nebulous time period. But then moving into the 18th century, next slide, please. Um, it really changes. The 18th century is interestingly sort of referred to by many historians, especially in the past, as Virginia's golden age. It's sort of the the time when the economy of Virginia, the sort of cultural, political, economic life was sort of at an ascendant point. But for who? Right? That's the question we're asking. And it was really a golden age for white Virginians, entirely based on the institution of slavery. You can see here, sort of on the left-hand side of the screen, I think it's the left. I'm really bad with left and right, and also horrible with names and dates, so I'm a really horrible historian. Um, but there's an excerpt from what is sort of colloquially known as the 1705 Slave Code. And if you look it up, you can look it up on Encyclopedia of Virginia online. They have it all there, and it is like a legal hammer coming down on Black people, both free and enslaved in Virginia at this time. It's a huge piece of legislation. It has all sorts of like really horrific stipulations, but it's the first time you sort of legally see all in one place laws that are differentiating between Black and white. So the excerpt I pulled up, I think it's one of the most horrifying things I've ever read in my entire life. And I'll just sort of take out some phrases, and it says, if any slave resists his master or owner or other person correcting such slave and shall happen to be killed in such correction, it shall not be counted felony, but it will be as if such incident had never happened. And this isn't like some crazy thing happening off on some plantation in the middle of nowhere. This is the law of Virginia, right? So that's basically saying if you kill an enslaved person in correction, uh, it didn't happen. It doesn't exist. Which to me is just like the absolute legal erasure of personhood, just laid out bare. In 1723, the General Assembly also passes another law that says if someone wanted to manumit, which means free, emancipate, manumit a person, the person had to get permission from the governor and the governor's council. So that's six of the most powerful white men in the colony of Virginia. And the result is between 1723 and the beginning of the American Revolution, fewer than 25 people legally won their freedom in the colony of Virginia. And I will say that the Ashby family was amongst those 25, which is pretty extraordinary. So I do have an example of what's called sort of a runaway ad on the left, really detailed descriptions of people, because if you were an enslaved person in Virginia in the 18th century, your best chance at freedom was to self-emancipate or to run away. I also have down on the bottom 3 marbles that came from the Bray School. Thank you, Bray School, for loaning us these items. They are from the excavation, and we didn't include it here in this part of the thing. You'll have to come and see the exhibit in person to get more details about the Ashby family and the Bray School. We feature it significantly in this section. But the Ashby children attended the Bray School, and I don't know if they played with these marbles. I don't know when they're from. But it's just so poignant to me, that these are marbles that these children or children like them were playing with at this time period. It's one of my favorite things in the exhibition. So thank you again, Bray School, for coming through. If you go to the next slide, 1782, and I know I could talk about this all day, so I'm trying to be quick and sort of do a summary. But 1782, the General Assembly, it's the conclusion of the American Revolution. The General Assembly passes a law that says private manumissions are now legal. So if someone wanted to manumit an enslaved person, they could do so through a deed or a will or any sort of other legal instrument. And this changed Virginia forever, literally changed the trajectory of Virginia history because there were about 1,800-ish free Black Virginians in 1782. And by the time 1806 rolls around, which is not that much longer, there's about 24,500. So that is a huge jump in population, and it is directly attributed to this liberalized manumission law. I like to call these people sort of the founding generation of freedom in Virginia because it's the first time that there were people, free people of that number, that were allowed to begin the process of things like establishing churches, conducting sort of underground schools, beginning communities, opening businesses, owning land, all of these things that we kind of understand as the cornerstones of civic society, right? And it's also their grandchildren and their children that we'll meet in the next section of the exhibit that really take what they can with freedom and run with it. So if you go on to the next section, please. So we called this complicating freedom, and it's sort of the meat in some way of this exhibit because it's that 19th century era, which is a period of contradiction. You see again, they're the children, the grandchildren of that founding generation, and they are doing things. They are owning land, they are opening barbershops, they are running restaurants, they are doing all sorts of things, right? Founding churches, again, all the things we understand as foundational to society, civic society. But at the same time, they're facing all sorts of restrictions, right? Um, like it is illegal to gather Black people to learn to read and write. You have to, if you are free, you have to register with the courts and you have to pay every year to 3 years to be registered. There's all sorts of restrictions. Black men, of course, aren't able to vote, serve on juries, have equal access to courts. All of these things, create a tiered society in which people are, yes, free, but they are not equal, right? And I put two images on this slide that I think really sort of embody this tension of this era. And they're again two of my favorite things in this exhibit. I put all of my favorite things from the exhibit in this slideshow. So that's like the fun, I get to do what I want. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a piece of paper. And it's really humble. I like to say too, in this exhibit, we don't really have any blockbuster items. We don't have any like Declaration of Independence or the Emancipation Proclamation, all of these really famous documents that everyone's familiar with. And I would say that was actually intentional on our part. I did not want those kinds of things to distract from the story. And I wanted to show that like these small little humble pieces of paper or images or things carried so much weight. And I think this is an example. It's a bond between a Black man named Ben Short and a white man. Ben Short was born enslaved. He gained his freedom. And if you kind of look closely at how he signed his name on this bond, it looks like someone who's just learning how to read and write. I remember kind of having that handwriting in kindergarten, first grade. You're sort of clutching the pencil and you don't really know like what to do. But he could have easily signed his name with an X. That would have been legally binding. But what I find so touching about this is that he was going to write his name, right? I just think that's so it's this small moment of triumph that's really possible in this 19th century context. But right next to it, and I know it's kind of hard to see, is the frontispiece of a book written by a man named Noah Davis. He was also born enslaved and he gained his freedom. And then there's a statement on the right basically saying, I have spent 12 years and $4,000 freeing my wife and children. And I'm writing this book to raise money to purchase the last two of my children remaining in slavery. Like that, I don't, that to me is just, think about that for a second. I don't have children, but I have friends who do. And I told this story to some of them, and one of my friends started crying because she's like, I just literally, I cannot imagine living through that. And so you have in this section, like I said, two sort of objects that really exemplify just like the possibilities of freedom, but then also the limitations that these people face nonetheless. Which I think is this a really powerful example of what these people faced, the challenges and the way they navigated them. So again, come see the exhibit. You can see them in person. Next slide, please. So, of course, this story would not be complete without discussing the Civil War, of course. And I would argue that long before the Civil War became a war of emancipation in the eyes of white people, free Black people and also enslaved Black people did understand this as a war for freedom and liberation. You see Black men joining the United States colored troops as soon as they can. We have a beautiful example. You've probably seen this photo, but we actually had it colorized, which I think just makes it so much more evocative. Change their clothes, change their hairstyle, and they could just be on this Zoom call with us today, right? And we also have a photograph, a Library of Congress image, the black and white, of a group of what's called contraband. And this is really pivotal for this point, this beat in this story. Early on in the war, three enslaved men escaped to Fort Monroe, which is in Hampton, to a Union Army fort, to Fort Monroe, like I said. And the commanding officer basically called them contrabands of war. And this changed the tone of the Civil War. It basically said if you were an enslaved person and you made it to the Union Army, you were sort of de facto free. There was a complicated legal classification of contraband versus free, but for sort of all intents and purposes, these people seized their own freedom and ran to the Union Army. And I just can't underscore the bravery that took. One, to self-emancipate, but also to do so in a war zone. It's incredible. And I love this photograph because it just shows, there's a baby in the photograph, there's older people, there's men, there's women, there's children, all age ranges, just really exemplifies what this meant to people and how many people really seized, again, their own freedom in this time. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So we end the exhibit, the actual physical exhibit, with a section called Embodying Freedom, and it's sort of post-Civil War all the way up to the current day. We talk a little bit about Reconstruction. The gentlemen in the picture are some of the first Black legislators ever in Virginia. They did many things, but one of which was establish a public school system for white and Black children. So if you went to a public school in Virginia, it was because of their efforts, which I think is pretty incredible. Free Black people who've been free prior to the war, understood what people needed in freedom, and the first thing was education. So that was just a really powerful thing that they helped establish. We also hired a photographer, a professional photographer named Ruddy Roy, to take photographs of some of the descendants that we actually worked with. We engaged with the descendant community quite a lot to shape this exhibit, and I really wanted sort of their buy-in, and I wanted to feature their stories. So the two ladies that you see on the left are the great-great-granddaughters of a man named Hezekiah Gaskins, who was free, and he worked as a stonemason. He built a smokehouse on the property of this current orchard that's still standing. So he used his income to purchase his wife and children, who are their ancestors. And so again, they're standing on the land that he worked on to raise money to purchase and free his family. So like these are just really powerful powerful stories, you know, like, and it shows that uh, this history isn't abstract. There are people living today who this is their family story. This is their lineage, right? And it's just something I think that we really strove to honor in this exhibit, and we're deeply thankful for all the descendants and the people who worked with us. And if you just go to the next slide, I included some pictures of actually what the exhibit looks like. It's again, you sort of see that semicircle that you go into, and the room kind of goes in a circle throughout the different periods of time. And I did, if you will go to the next slide. That is the Williamsburg and the Bray School and the Ashby family. And Teddy, you are quoted up on the wall in giant big letters. So I just wanted to highlight that. I know it's not a great picture. It's the lighting in there is beautiful, but it's not great for photographs. So you know, it's just an example of how we really wanted to focus in on specific places and people, and we just loved, I love the Ashby family story. I think it's just incredibly powerful. And again, thank you so much to the Bray School for making that possible. We could have never done that without you. So we really appreciate it. And I know I've gone over and I got kicked off and all the things. So I can turn it over. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you, Elizabeth. That was wonderful. Oh my goodness. I have so many things that I wanted to say, but I'm gonna wait, and I'm going to introduce Jennie. If you would like to go ahead and take it from here. I've asked Jennie to speak about the significance of bringing the exhibit to William and Mary and what people can expect to see when they come see it. So.
Okay, and we will see if I can figure out how to bring up the presentation correctly. Let's see. Are you okay? Let's see. Are you seeing like the presentation? Can you see like other things on the screen too, or just the presentation? Perfect.
Just the presentation. You got it. Yep.
Okay. So this is our like promo ad for the traveling exhibit being at Swem Library. And it is in our building through the end of April. Here's a photo of the installation in our Read and Relax area, where you see we have the kind of banners of it. It is a condensed version of the physical exhibit that's at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture. So you can see it's kind of on panels with subsections. Its location is in our Vaughn Read and Relax, which is on the first floor of Swem Library. So if you come in our main entrance, which is on our academic quad, you walk through to these computers and then turn right. Coincidentally, the Bray School Lab's office is right here, very, very close by. And so we do hope that if you come to the Descendants Week opening or reception for this, that you'll get to see the exhibit in place. And let me see what else. So one of the things is, in terms of why we're hosting this exhibit at William and Mary. And so I'll start with the middle one, which was in thinking about what Swem Library or what William and Mary Libraries could do related to the 250th. We are in the historic triangle, and there are so many better resourced institutions and institutions that focus on specifically the history of the around 1776. What could we do as an institution that wouldn't kind of replicate or do something of the same kind of content? And so thinking about one of the things that I, looking at this exhibit, really appreciated was how much it complicated, I think, as Elizabeth mentioned, complicated this kind of narrative in the very quotable text of all men being created equal and having certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And how our commemoration of what the Declaration of Independence did, or the founding of the United States, how complicated that is for everyone. And so to me, that was one of the reasons why, in terms of hosting this exhibit here at William and Mary, bringing some of that to campus, where I would say our main audience of who's going to see the exhibit while it's here are probably William and Mary students. who may not make it to Richmond to see the full exhibit based on their studies, lack of access to cars, et cetera. And so part of that was also the collaboration that took place in creating the exhibit that included working with institutions of higher education, including William and Mary, and faculty members from William and Mary, Richard Bland College, and then also a William and Mary history PhD alum who's at Norfolk State University. So there were a lot of connections. I think one of the kind of advocates in creating the exhibit was also Timothy Sullivan, who is a former president of William and Mary. And so there are a lot of connections in terms of William and Mary as an institution in the creation of it. And then there's also the kind of local history aspects that the Bray School in the traveling exhibit, like the Bray School is prominently featured in there with a banner in one of the banners. But we also have, looking at, and I don't know if you can see, we also have the kind of unbound volume that goes along with it that has essays written by those professors that are mentioned. I think they're actually on the next page, this page, yeah. That features essays written by William Mary faculty members, including Richard Blandskull, and then our emeritus helped write the foreword for it. Is thinking through like here we have an exhibit that a traveling exhibit is very much a condensed version of the text, and how that relates to the research that these faculty members started with, right? That Professor Elise has like several monographs on content related to free Black communities in Virginia, and kind of this trajectory of research, right? That we have the research written for specific scholars, and then we have research written for kind of a public audience. So I think for us in the library setting, like that's a good thing to show our students is this kind of how you talk to other scholars, and then how you talk to a broader community or broader public about your research and about the kind of new things that you're exploring. So I always like talking with our students about that in a public history setting is like, how is the research we're doing in the archives and the papers that you're writing, how do you transform that like in an exhibit where you're writing for a public audience instead of your professor? We have also been collaborating with the First Baptist Church of Williamsburg on helping to preserve their records. And we have also have a partnership with the Bruton Parish Church, where we've been hosting their records on site for many years, and which includes some of their historic registers that include some of the free Blacks here in Williamsburg, Black folks, in terms of the birth records and baptism records. So there are a lot of connections with local history. I know in terms of the descendants that are featured in the exhibit, like Brian Palmer has been a regular speaker at the Lemon Project Symposium and has been doing work at the historic African-American burial grounds that are at Camp Perry as well. So there is definitely some local connections here in the Williamsburg area. Since you saw the full exhibit panel of the portion that was about the Bray School Lab, here is the traveling exhibit panel that features the Bray School and the Ashby family. Please come to see it in real life so you can get the full version of it. And then Teddy's quote is on there as well. Yay. And so looking at where we have connections in our collections too, and this is not an exhaustive list because I did not have time to make an exhaustive list. So we are accessible for research if you want to come see what we have that could relate to this exhibit and the free Black population of Virginia from our collections. But here looking at, and I don't know if you can also see these close buttons that are on there. Don't know why they appeared, sorry. But in terms of, this is a page from the Bruton Parish Church Records register that we digitized in conjunction with Bruton Parish Church and transcribed, and it does include different mentions of free Blacks in addition to enslaved individuals. And in reading some of this, in terms of the connection of people saying that you can't enslave other Christians and that by being baptized that they should be able to win their freedom. These kind of church records were something that probably would have been used in court cases as well. So St. George Tucker, who is the second law professor here at William and Mary, is also mentioned in the accompanying volume. And we have the Tucker Coleman papers, which has been one of the signature kind of paper collections that we have here at William and Mary Special Collections. And so one of his notable publications is on a dissertation on slavery with a proposal for the gradual abolition of it in the state of Virginia. And my understanding is this is one of the most complete records in terms of like a contemporary of what slavery was, I'm trying to explain it, sorry. The legal codes related to slavery throughout history and kind of a survey of how it was being implemented in Virginia at the time, and was really well researched. He was also, we have his notes on Blackstone's commentaries, which he published into an edition that was helpful in setting up common law or applying English common law to the US in setting up kind of laws that would be implemented here in the US. And as you mentioned, Elizabeth, there wasn't much on slavery per se in that originally in English common law, so this is how they're working on applying it. So in addition to that, we have some things related to the Colonization Society of Virginia, including some abstracts of reports, which let's see if there's something. And then we also have, again, in the Tucker Coleman papers, we have some of the legal case documents that are related to John Randolph of Roanoke's will, in which, if you can see the transcribed version on the right side is where he attempted to free his enslaved people as part of his will, which was contested by the descendants of John Randolph of Roanoke. And there were a very long legal case about whether he was allowed to do this through his will and whether the will was valid. But you can see that I think he updated it. This is a transcription, and I believe this is of the time period transcription and not the original will. In terms of freeing his enslaved people, but also giving them funds to help set up their new lives in freedom. And then this is these are kind of court case records or transcriptions of some of that court case and the long legal battle that went through that. So I think that's what I had prepared. We have a lot more that we could get out, and so hopefully you will come to research with us when you come to look at the exhibit and see what else we have.
Terrific. Thank you, Jennie. Thank you. And Teddy, we've got you're up now. What I asked Teddy to speak on was, what it means to have the Williamsburg Bray School be a part and also have her family featured in the exhibit, and also reflections on just, that sharing of that history in that public history kind of way. This is her family. These are her ancestors. So Teddy, I turn it over to you.
Now that I see that exhibit on the Ashbys, it's really moved me. And to see my name on the wall. But the people here, let me give you something. So Matthew Ashby, he was a mixed race person. His mother, Mary Ashby, she was a servant to James Shield of Shield's Tavern, which is right in Colonial Williamsburg, but part of the tourist attraction. But I've been there, and they've given me free food. My money is no good because I'm Mistress Ashby. So Matthew, John, and Rosianna is Mary's children, and these were mixed race children. And with my research, I have not found the African that would be their father. But the Bray School scholars and the research working with Elizabeth and Maureen and Nicole really brought tears to my eyes also, because John and Harry, when Matthew married Anne Ashby, partnered with Anne because they didn't have a marriage at the time, really, in church, but they had John and Harry, and so Matthew had the confidence. Matthew, what I say on that wall about confidence and we can't be intimidated, that is very true, because Matthew went to the colonial governor to a petition to be able to buy his wife Anne in 1769. So, and he did. And so then he went back, and he went back that same year to petition the council, those 6 men, to set them free. And the council did approve them to be free. So when Harry, that third child, was born, Harry was born free. So now the whole family was free. Not only is the whole family free, but the whole family is also being educated. Bray School, their inventory of his books and his inventory of his will shows he had books and other things. But the important part was the books that he had. It's not even white, purple, and green had books, right? And so all of that makes Matthew, from my perspective, just a giant of a person. And I think that because the way he operated in Colonial Williamsburg, Bruton Parish, and so forth, how he moved around, how he did not take crap from anyone. As a matter of fact, he even, I believe the idea is that he hid someone who was going to be a runaway. And also, he was also put in jail and fined for assaulting someone. He didn't kill anyone. But his confidence and his respect for leadership and just his integrity, because he could be trusted by the governor and other um, leaders of that period to travel and barter their money, take their goods and travel and negotiate. And they had no reason to ever think that he was going to be a thief or a fraud and so forth. And the other thing was when Virginia began passing those laws, as soon as a black person could do something, they said, "Oh, we got to get a law for that one." I don't know if you ever seen the list, but I have a list in my file. It's a long list. It's like every 2 seconds they're making up a law. But when they said that all free black people had to leave Virginia by a certain time, I knew that for years because they've been told about it in our family. That was part of our family thing at the reunions. I mean, amongst other stuff about the history. But they would say, "Well, Matthew, he said he wasn't leaving. This is his town, and this is his land. This is his place. He's staying here." And so that was always something that I knew to take a stand. I don't have to bow my head. You're right. And the people that went before me, they didn't bow their heads either. And also, that First Baptist Church, uh, 1776. So my grandfather, which is Matthew's, John and Harry's descendant, Reverend John Hillier Ashby, he was the assistant pastor there at the turn of the century. So when I came to visit, and well, we have our reunions every couple of years. We're having one this summer. Um, the church found out that I was there. My cousin said, "Oh, our genealogist is here," and I went over there, and they had made a copy of one of his the Sunday programs with my grandfather's picture was on the front. It was like 1901 or something. Yes, he was the assistant pastor. So yes, I think the Ashby people, I think they had a lot of influence on the world around them back in the day and for decades after. I do think so. Yes, and we're still trying to make a difference, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Thanks, Jennie. I wanted to ask you, I mean, had you ever, when Elizabeth was saying that less than 25 people had been granted freedom from the governor's council, had you known that your family was one of that 25? I had not heard that number before.
No, because I didn't know how many the number was that were granted freedom. All I knew
Right.
was that Matthew petitioned with the governor, and the governor told Samuel Spur that he could not change that amount because it's going to take Matthew a minute to save it, 150 pounds. And so when he came with 150 pounds, the governor said, "Okay, Samuel, he's got Ann and those two children." And so
Yeah.
that was that. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
So so I've got some questions I was gonna ask, and we've got a little bit more time. We can fit these in. So
All
I'm
right.
gonna throw these open to Teddy. We'll start with you, but for all of three of you, um, why is this exhibit important or so important in this moment, do you think?
I think it's important because you know what? One of the things it shows you is that Black people uh, were free, and just as many enslaved people, the black free people, they both were contributing to the United States of America, to making this country what it is today, even before it became the United States. Because you know what? Black people were making farms, with a great deal to do with the economics of why the people, the colonists even stayed here, right? Because you had people who came here who didn't know what a broom looked like, right? And if it wasn't for them having people to work, right, to make the economics so they could eat 3 squares a day and so forth and so on, they may not have been in America, because they would have all sailed back to Europe. They would have sailed and said, "Oh, it's not working. We got to go back to Europe," right?
Right.
Because the
Right.
people who came here to do the tobacco, they didn't even know how to farm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Indians my other relatives had to tell them what to do. They
Exactly.
didn't all starve to death. Yes, no, seriously. And you know what? How it's relevant today is because you know what? I got to tell you something. As I drive around and see things, and I can see the holes in a lot of services because the immigrants are not coming out to do the work that they had been doing. I don't know if you see it in Virginia, but I can see it in Pennsylvania, and I can see it in New Jersey. And it really these the enslaved people and the free people, they mattered. They really did matter. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Elizabeth,
Absolutely. Oh, I also want to say, Teddy, that every time I do a tour, I literally say, I don't know who Matthew Ashby was, but he must have been somebody.
Yes, and you know what? It was so funny. When I was growing up, see, my great uncle Bill had the manumission papers, and we would have at the reunion for when he bought Anne Ashby. He would have the paper, and I would tell people at school, and they would think I was lying.
Yeah,
Even the teacher. I said, "Oh yeah, I have a slave in my family. She was my great great grandmother." And they were like, "No, your family was enslaved, Teddy." I mean, I had people when I was a
yeah,
kid, because we had known a lot of this history as children, because our family told it to us. They said,
yeah.
"But you went to school to tell your teacher when they were doing history or something," and you said, "Oh, I can do it." They said, "No, you can't."
It's,
Oh,
and I think it's just, it's incredible. Like one of the things that I value most about being able to do this exhibit is to hear stories like that and to engage with people like you, Teddy, and the other just Brian Palmer, all the people, that we worked with. One, I think you said it perfectly, like they mattered, their ancestors mattered.
Yes,
And I also, I think I opened with this. It's just like the questions I think that we raise in this exhibit, what is free? Who is free? How is freedom limited for certain people and on what terms? These are perpetual questions that we've
yes.
we've been dealing with since day one in this
Right.
state and this
Yes, because
country. You
because
know,
the freedom back then was almost like the apartheid. They have to.
yeah,
I have South African cousins, and they back in the day, and they when they came over here in the 1960s, they showed me their card that they had to travel with, and so the free people of color in the United States, they had to travel with something, just
absolutely.
like apartheid. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's
So
something
people
that
didn't understand that. They thought, oh, they were free. So when they finally figured out, when people finally believed that there were black people that were free, because I had people today will say, oh, there was no free people in North Carolina,
yeah.
and but there was such a limit with the restriction on travel time and so forth. How many? And it was a joke, when I started working, and we would gather around the water cooler, and it would be a big joke, and we'd say, oh, there's more than 3 people here. We better be careful. We don't get fired. And
Yeah.
and to tell young people that today, they would be like, "What? What do you mean? You
Yeah.
couldn't gather at work?"
Yeah.
Well, that
Well,
was the same case back in the old days. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and I think this exhibit and what you're saying really challenges people to think about what we're doing today, right?
Yes.
And not just I don't mean politically, but just like how what are ways in which we still perpetuate systems of oppression, right? How do we make people free but not equal? And there's so many ways we still do that.
Yes.
the country, and I hope that this exhibit is a challenge for people to think about that and to take action to stop that, um, like
You know what? And I'm glad it's traveling around. Will it be traveling up to Philadelphia or New Jersey or?
it is anyone who wants to take it. We will ship it anywhere. So,
Oh,
so
okay. Because you know what? We have a big library here, the big free library in Philadelphia, and so my daughter, she's good friends with the head of that library system. So I will
please,
ask.
I
I didn't
will.
know you could ask. You could. So we can ask. They can make
Oh
a
yeah,
request. Oh,
yes. I'll email you separately. There's a link on our website. You just fill it out, and we will send it to you.
oh, thank you. Can I ask you a question? Can
Absolutely.
you can you send me the slide that has the Ashby on it with my saying up on the wall?
Yeah.
Because I don't think I'm going to get to see it unless you. But my cousins, I sent it to my cousins, and three of them have since come up to your. They live in Newport News, and one lives in someplace else, Virginia Beach. They've come up. They've been to the exhibit. They loved it. Loved it.
That's awesome. I love
They were
that.
amazed.
We've gotten really universally positive feedback on it, which has been so amazing. And again, it's amazing that the traveling exhibit allows people who can't make it to Richmond, have access to the
Yes.
information.
Yeah, you're like the Smithsonian.
Ah!
You're getting like the Smithsonian there, the
Uh,
traveling thing.
so,
Yes. And
uh,
you know what? I made some good notes because now I got some more research to do.
yeah.
Because that 1705 slave code
Hmm.
is I'm gonna have to write something for my genealogy. I'm gonna write that up on my genealogy newsletter. I'm the newsletter person.
Nice,
Beautiful,
nice.
beautiful.
Jenny, I wanted to give you an opportunity if you had something you wanted to add as well. And I'm also being mindful of the time, but I wanted to make sure that if you had, some thoughts about, why, either why this exhibit is so important in this moment, and also what you hope people will take away from this exhibit.
I think going back to one of the, in terms of why William and Mary is hosting it, and that idea of our 250th commemoration also needing complications, right? And like that's one of the reasons why I personally got really interested in history and went to school to work in museums, is because I really find that kind of grappling with the complexities and yeah, I think anything needs to be like a commemoration as opposed to simply a celebration, right?
Mhm.
And a commemoration of where the complexities and where for all of the monumental ideals of what the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, Constitution, Bill of Rights, like our founding kind of documents in the founding era, for all of the ideals that we should be celebrating. There were a lot of complications, and there were a lot of conflictions, right? And a lot of and thinking about in our contemporary society now, like if there were easy answers to things, we probably would have already solved a lot of these problems, right? And just thinking about how yeah, like how even in contemporary discussions, like with the issues that we have today, there are a lot of there's in addition to conflict about how we should do things, there's just a lot of complications in them, and how much of I grew up in New York, so my background, like we had fourth grade New York State history classes, so my understanding of Virginia history has been primarily as an adult, and thinking about where those kind of ideas that I grew up with about slavery in the South, right, was the predominant narrative, where New York having an early kind of emancipation date, we consider ourselves not quite right, it says there, like slave society, right? Or a society that was founded on enslavement and I'm trying to think. There were a lot of really great things in the book that had so I'm going to recommend that
That's the book.
you get this because there's a lot more eloquent people than I am explaining what the content means. So learning about this kind of dichotomy in Virginia, where you have free people, enslaved people, you have free people who are enslaving or owning their family members, because that protected them more than them being free, right? Them being property gave them, more stability or more over their family members than if they were all free. Those kind of contradictions and complications are really, I think, to me, like empowering to think about, and also thinking about in our current context of debates over birthright citizenship, right? And what were the reasons why that was put into an amendment, things like that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Folks, I appreciate you all being here with us, even past 7 o'clock, but I am looking at the clock, and this has been a wonderful conversation. I know there's been some things in the chat, and I'm hoping that people who have asked questions have actually gotten their questions answered. If there is a question that was asked in the chat that wasn't, please feel free to go ahead and ask. I'm looking back through it. It looks like there's some really good conversation going on in the chat too. So
I will
don't see
say,
any.
yeah, to Todd Long's question, that for all intents and purposes, the first arrivals were enslaved. I mean, yeah, but it gets tricky because like what is happening in practice is not always
Mhm.
happening in law, until it gets enshrined in law. So it's just
Yes.
that 17th century is like a really weird period where the law in some ways is catching up to like the situation on the ground. So
Yep.
so,
perfect.
I
All right.
have something I did want to say to Elizabeth from
Sure.
the VMHC.
Oh, yes.
Um, no, over the weekend, like I put up in the chat here, I was offered a contract with the History Press on writing a book on slavery in Tidewater, colonial Virginia, and part of my motivation for it was the Unbound exhibit.
Hmm.
So
that's
yeah.
incredible to hear.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really challenging. I know we're out of time and I literally could talk forever. I'm a chatter. It's hard when you do this work in museums and you spend so much time and you put so much love and so much heart, and then it goes up and you just don't really know what what it's doing, how it's impacting people, and unless you hear from people like you. And so that is incredibly touching, and thank you so much. And while I have the mic again, thank you so much to the Bray School. Incredible partners
Yes.
in this endeavor. It like literally would have been impossible without you guys. And we just deeply, deeply respect, admire, and appreciate you guys. So
Oh, well, the
Oh,
feeling is very mutual. My
oh,
goodness.
me too.
Yes, we and I am so appreciative that the three of you were able to go along with this idea that I had, that I was like, oh, we need to we need to talk about this on Bray School Stories. So thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Jennie, Elizabeth, Teddy, thank you very much. And for
Thank
everybody who's
you.
been with us, thank you for this evening, and thank you for a good conversation. And yes, Elizabeth, come see the exhibit in the wild. And Jennie, I'm so excited that we're going to do this during Descendant Week. And Teddy, come down and see us sometime soon.
I'm gonna get there. My reunion is the end of July.
Excellent.
We'll be there.
Excellent. Terrific.
Mhm.
Terrific.
Yep.
All right, thank you all very much. I'm going to let everybody have the rest of their evening back, but and I will say Bray School Stories is going to be back next month, so be on the lookout for that through social media channels and also on our website. So thank you for being a part of this journey. Thank you for being here this evening, and we look forward to seeing you all back next time at Bray School Stories. Take care, everybody.
Okay.